Greetings. I'd like to talk a little bit about media crimes and trials in this video. And there's so much to discuss. Really, we could spend days and days, but I'm going to try to summarize some of the research and the ideas. What I'd like to do is start, though, with Battaglia's article, The Casey Anthony Trial and Wrongful Exonerations, How Trial by Media Cases Diminish Public Confidence in the Criminal Justice System, which is published in the Albany Law Review, volume 75.3, pages 1579 to 1611. Battaglia does a great job of conducting a critical analysis of the Casey Anthony trial and some of the effects that this trial may have had, or some of the media effects on the public perception and the trial. For example, that Battaglia believes that the public view of the criminal justice system is influenced by the media, and that in fact the media may undermine the criminal justice system, that we have various situations where this can become problematic. For example, the armchair juries may stigmatize the different players in the criminal justice system. If you remember, in the Casey Anthony trial, we have these armchair juries that get together on television. They choose some people from the general public. They put together this jury system that are supposed to watch the trial and then make commentary throughout the trial as if they're the jury. This in no way represents a jury in reality. And also there are many things that this so-called armchair jury would not have access to, much information, and so it can become problematic, and certainly they do not behave in the ways under the legal guidelines that a real jury behaves. People see this, they may think that's how juries act and may really provide some misinformation. Also, the media attention may jeopardize the right to a fair trial, and that some that have been on juries have reported such bad experiences that they would never want to do it again, and their lives are disrupted. They may have to move. They may get death threats. I would add that juries could traumatize. I'm sorry, that jury members could be traumatized by the case, similar to what we refer to as post-traumatic stress disorder. Suffer the effects of trauma, and this trauma may come not only from the actual case itself, being exposed to violent situations, but also from the media attention and the public's reaction to the jury. And then we need to ask the question, and Battaglia asked this question, if it's possible now and in the future, if some juries will convict a defendant to avoid bad press. Battaglia gives some examples of talk show hosts and television talking heads referring to juries as kooky juries, crazy juries, critiquing the jury members, and so on. Some of the attorneys in the Casey Anthony case reported getting death threats at their home. And this can lead to what Battaglia refers to in the article as wrongful exonerations, or a defendant is acquitted, but the public believes he or she is guilty. And that's what apparently occurred in the Casey Anthony trial. And if we look at crime reporting, Frost and Phillips in their 2011 article provide us a wealth of information about what's actually reported. And this comes from their article, Talking Heads, Crime Reporting on Cable News, from Justice Quarterly, volume 28, pages 87 to 112. They point out that crime reporting is based on organizational needs and also may influence policy making, and that there appears to be an over-reliance on interviewing government officials, for example, politicians, and also law enforcement officials. And what we don't see or rarely see are academics and researchers that are guests on these news shows. For example, in their study, Frost and Phillips found that they made up only 4% of guest appearances. Professor Surratt from the University of Central Florida in his 2007 book also talks about this whole idea of backwards law, or the media tending to cover the most unusual cases. And Frost and Phillips also talk about news as becoming entertainment in that sense. Also, they point out that there's a tendency to recycle guests, and analysts and experts may be employed by the news organization, but we may never know where they got their expertise, what makes them an expert, what knowledge they have, what training they have. And we often see that where someone is brought on and they're not necessarily an expert, but there is an appearance of them being an expert, and they have some kind of title that may not be regulated by various professional organizations. You know, for example, that if someone comes in on and they're an expert in behavioral analysis of crime, well, anyone can say that. That's not a regulated title in that sense. But for someone to be a clinical psychologist, they must be licensed, and we know that they have met a minimal level of training. Well, also, Frost and Phillips point out that guests rarely discuss crime causation, control, or policy, that they rarely discuss what actually may be the causes of the particular crime, or how this crime should be addressed or controlled, or research-based policy. So there's lots of issues related there. Also, we may ask, how is technology used to create information about crimes and trials, and about how digital trails are left and mined by news organizations and others? In other words, in my opinion, the mic is always on. I sometimes make the joke that I have a lie detector app on my smartphone, and the joke is that I go to a meeting with politicians, and in the middle of the meeting, my phone goes off making all kinds of noise, and I'm like, oh, sorry, just my lie detector app. It's supposed to be kind of a joke, but is it? Is it a joke? I mean, we're going to have voice stress analysis and during meetings, you know, try to evaluate as things get more sophisticated. So perhaps it's no joke at all that we really do have the potential to see this in operation in the reporting. Certainly you can remember all those shows where they have public opinion and they have the focus groups and the people are pressing on the emotion meter and so on and so forth, and they vote who's telling the truth, who's lying, and so on. We also have a lot of written records that we're familiar with, public documents, newspapers, magazines, books, private documents, but also, and a lot of photographs and videos. But now with the online and social networking, we see that web searches and looking at people's social media sites, their Twitter accounts, their Facebook accounts, that's often you know, the case now. And it's amazing when you find out there's wars going on, and some of the leaders of the particular warring factions will tweet what they want to get out there in the news world, or they'll post it on their Facebook page. And this also occurs with crimes as well. There's a lot more use of social media as it relates to crimes and trials, and that's something that we don't see obviously in the earlier cases that we study. So think about some of these cases. One example that I give regarding kind of social media chaos occurred in the Zimmerman's trial, when one of Zimmerman's attorneys went out for ice cream with his daughters after a day of providing of obtaining testimony in the trial. He went out to get ice cream with his daughters. His daughter posted a selfie of him and her eating the ice cream with some statement and posted it on Twitter. and that went viral. She had to shut down her account. False accounts were set up. It was national and international news. The ice cream selfie. And what I would say from that, I'm not going to pass judgment one way or the other. I'm just saying that is a situation of things to come, in my opinion. In other words, you can see a lot more cases involve situations like that. So we have to ask how these technological devices and communication methods will affect crimes and trials. Parenti in 2003 book points out that each piece of digital surveillance seems harmless until one puts it all together. And Parenti's book, The Soft Cage, published by Basic Books, really is an excellent overview of really what we're getting into. And again, 2003. So we're talking about over 10 years ago. Parenti saw what was happening, predicted it, and now it's getting more intense. And so we always have to think about how information's used or protected, and who can look at the information, and how that relates to the whole idea of presenting cases in the media. So think about the aspects related to technology as well. And this wraps up this video. Thank you.